Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to give a little bit of a tutorial demonstration about chuck steaks and Denver steaks, or chuck eye steaks. Delmonico steaks is what they're also called, and also Denver steaks. I want to basically show you the best way possible to get the most out of your money by not just buying a whole chuck roll, because a whole chuck roll will cost you about $5.78 a pound, and the actual chuck steak or chuck roast themselves will cost you $5.98 a pound. But when you buy a whole chuck roll, you can only get so many steaks out of it, and the rest of it has to be cut up into stew meat or hamburger, ground up in hamburger. But if you want to get the most steaks you can, I would say, and I'm going to show you how to pick a steak or how to pick a roast so that you can cut them up and get the most out of your steaks. Okay, so the first thing you're going to look for when you're looking at your packages, and at Sam's they come in a package of 2. So what you're first going to look for is you're going to be looking for the center stripe of fat. So this side of the fat is the Denver steak, and this over here is the Delmonico or the chuck eye over here. So you have your Denver and you have your chuck eye. So you want to look for that center fat, and then you can have your chuck eye and your Denver. And then here, same thing. Here's your Denver, and here's your chuck eye. Here's your center. You have your Denver and your chuck eye. You can see it right through here. And then same thing. You have your chuck eye, and you have your Denver over here. And the fat's going down the middle. And again, the fat going down the middle, Denver, chuck eye or Delmonico. And then right here, same thing. You have your chuck eye, and you have your Denver, and same thing, chuck eye and Denver. So when you go and pick up, I picked up 4 packages at $5.98 a pound, and now I'm going to cut these, and I will get, now I could get 1 chuck eye and 1 Denver out of each one of those, but they're not going to cook very well. I'm going to take them, then I'm going to cut them in half. So I'm going to separate the meat, and then I'm going to cut them in half so that they cook faster, and also they won't be as tough. So that's also a key when you're doing these, is that the thinner they are and the shorter you cook them, the more tender the meat will be. So I'm going to break these down for you in the next part of this video, and also give you some information on what I found as far as prices. I can tell you right now that chuck eye steaks cut at the store are going to cost you anywhere from $6.99 a pound all the way up to $9.99 a pound. So you can get the chuck roast, and sometimes they're on special. You can get them for almost $3 a pound. But you want to look for the center fat before you pick one. The other roasts that you see are just, they're not going to be that good. They're not going to have that much marbling. So when you're picking out a roast, you want to make sure you get that center fat, and you'll get the best meat from the chuck roll. Okay, so I'm going to break down each one of these. I'm going to separate the meat. You should be able to do this just with your hand, separating them. You may need a knife every once in a while, like when the skin gets a little hard to get through. Make sure you get everything associated with that side. And I'll just break each one of these down, and then I'm going to cut them after I get them broken down. But here, that's the Denver right there. See the Denver? And then the chuck eye or Delmonico. So we're going to separate each one of them. See, they're pretty, some of them are real easy to separate. You don't have to use a knife at all to separate them. So if you want to do them pretty thick, I mean, that's your choice. But I wouldn't recommend doing them that thick. So there's a chuck eye. You see how thick it can be? I'm going to cut these in half. And that also makes it a lot easier too when you pick those roasts that have that center fat. You just get your chuck eye and your Denver. Anything extra, you can just take some of that fat and use it for tallow. But if you look at all the steak or all the roasts when you're at the store, you can pick out the best ones for this task. But again, look for those sales on chuck roasts and go to your store and grab yourself a few on sale and then cut them up into steaks. You can have yourself about a $4 steak. And the chuck eye is the closest thing to the rib eye. So, and sometimes with the rib, if you get the boneless rib, the boneless rib steaks, sometimes you might get a chuck eye instead of a rib, depending on your butcher. All right, so now that I got them all separated, I'm going to take my first chuck eye, and we're just going to cut that thing right in half. So that we can get about 2 steaks out of this chuck eye. We have 1 chuck eye, and then we have 2 chuck eyes. And it's really not that hard to cut them if you got a knife and a cutting board. Some people say, yeah, you can get the butcher to do this for you, to cut them and everything, but they're going to charge you most of the time. Or, depending on the butcher, they may direct you right to the meat case and say, there they are right there. But you won't get them for $4 or $6 a pound. You're going to pay a whole lot more for the cut ones already. So save yourself some money and just cut them yourself. It's real easy. I used to be concerned about doing this myself until I did it the first time. You see, I work in IT, and I was scared to mess with the computer the first time until I actually did it and just dove in on it. It's kind of the same thing with that. You just gotta take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and just cut it. There's many videos out there about how to cut meat, and I watched a bunch right before I did this. So, I want you to be able to save some money, especially when doing this way of eating. No reason why you should have to live on hamburger alone when this costs just as much as hamburger meat, and you can enjoy steak out of it. And it's the closest thing you'll get to a ribeye without having to pay $8 and up on the pound. Last time I did this, my whole family enjoyed them. They all thought they were really tender. And that's the last chuck eye. If you notice on the Denver steak, right here, notice how the grain is going this way. Okay? So when you cut, you want to cut this way. So then, and then see how the grain now? Just look at that. See all that marbling in there? Now see this big fat here? Now you can cut this out if you want, save it for tallow. Or just fry it up in the air fryer and have yourself a little bit fatty bit. Now we're ready to cook. So I'll cook these up and I'll show you a little bit later. But you get 2 Denver steaks out of each one of those. So I had 8 of them, so I got 16 Denver steaks, and I've got 16 chuck eyes. So I've got 32 steaks here, and you can probably have 1 or 2 of these just depending on how hungry you are, but 32 steaks, hamburger will cost you at a minimum $3 a pound. So you can have a hamburger, or you can have yourself a nice chuck eye or a nice Denver steak. And I'll come back to you once I have them cooked. Okay, before I cook these, I want to give you a little bit of a look of the 32 steaks that I cut from those 8 roasts. So again, that's 32 steaks. These are all the chuck eye, 16 chuck eye. Here's the last ones up there. Those are all the Denver. Okay, so here's the finished product. I have my Denver steaks over here, all 16 of them, and then I have my chuck eye over here, or the Delmonico. There's 16 of them over here. So I got 32 steaks, and this was $107, and it was 17 3/4 pounds. So you can get, like, depending on how hungry you are, you could have 1, 2, 3. I eat 1 meal a day. So 3 of these will last for a little bit, and then I have 3 other people eating. So if they want 1 or 2 for each meal, this should last us a few days, like 2 or 3 days. But I wanted to show you, because a lot of people talk about, how tough it is or how tough chuck roasts are, and I just want to use a regular knife. But the Denver steaks, I cooked them for 12 minutes, and then for the chuck eye, I cooked them for 10. But I just want you to see that you can just cut this with just a regular knife. You don't even need a steak knife. And then you can look at that, and that looks really good. And the same thing with the chuck eye. It basically cuts just like a ribeye. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to scratch it. But even up here in the thicker part, you can just cut that with just a regular knife. And I'll let you see that. So there you go. 10 minutes and 12 minutes. Don't need a steak knife. You can just use a regular knife and cut them. But that's the Denver and the chuck eye, or Delmonico, from a chuck roast.